try as much as possible to prepare thoroughly and to practice several times. Because the more you practice, the more confident you become. In fact, I always state that practice begets confidence.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Or find me on LinkedIn, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. Why are processes important? What good are they within a marketing mix? We're going to process all that later. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. But first, let's meet Lucille Ossai, a strong advocate and expert of effective communication. Something I probably have to work on. Lucille is passionate about helping professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders hone their communication skills so that they excel in careers and boost business results. As the founder and editor of the award-winning Rethinking Business Communications Blog, her blog is ranked among the top 30 communications blog on the web by Feedspot. It has also been named a top business communications blog by Business First Impressions. Some decent accolades there, you must admit. Lucille is the communication coach at the globally ranked Lagos Business School in Nigeria, where she facilitates sessions on communication in open seminars, as well as provides communication support for full-time MBA students and executive MBA participants. In her private ventures, she's a communications trainer who brings her wealth of experience in blogging, lecturing, and coaching to deliver communication services for individual and corporate clients. Her motto: take action today to improve your skills because you cannot wish your communication problems away. Brilliant. What I really want to know is, Lucille, name one thing that you just don't understand.
Well, I'm based in Nigeria and we are currently in the rainy season. Now, what I don't understand is how humongous trees that have deep roots sometimes uprooted by strong winds during heavy rainstorms or during heavy rains. And then the next day, we just see this huge tree basically toppled over. It just amazes me. You know, trees are really strong, but they are still at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is one thing, I think.
Puzzling. Okay, let's get on to some more serious things. What's your story that's brought you to this stage of your career? Deep breath for this one. As founder and editor of Rethinking Business Communications Blog, and also finding the time to coach students through their studies in communication, family life. You've got going on a whole host of other things. Take us through your story.
Well, everything started with my blog, yeah?
Okay.
So I stumbled onto blogging by accident. In fact, I began blogging impulsively about 7 years ago, because at that time, I had developed an interest in communication and just decided one Saturday morning to begin writing an article. And I actually started writing my first article on my BlackBerry device. And then when I got home, I transferred it to the desktop to complete. And that day, I named the blog Rethinking Business Communications Blog. And I have been blogging ever since. And what I found out is that the insights and knowledge that I acquired along the way, was instrumental in my landing a job as a communications coach at the Lagos Business School. And that is where I currently coach MBA students on honing their communication skills. So it's been a really good experience for me. And along the way, I've expanded my services. And in my private ventures, I now offer training sessions such as workshops and seminars in public speaking, nonverbal communication, and business writing. So in a nutshell, that's my story.
Fantastic. One thing you mentioned there where it all started really is your blog. Can you explain what a blog editor does?
Well, I can tell you what I do. I don't know whether that's the same for everyone. I research and write articles on communication, management, and workplace dynamics, like workplace issues. And I also proofread and publish these articles and promote them on social media. So I do all those things as the editor of my blog.
Wow, a whole host of things going on there, then a lot of things to balance.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, okay, taking this a bit further, your passion is in communication. You coach students. You've got a blog about it. Can you just break down why being a good communicator is so important?
Yes. The thing is, we live in a competitive age, yeah? So superb communication skills are what would set you apart from your peers. Whether you're a student, an executive, a business owner, or a leader, if you're able to communicate your ideas persuasively, then you have the chance of beating the competition and thriving, especially in this digital age of automation, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. So that's really why it's important for everyone, even students, to take concrete steps to improving their communication skills.
And I think that's really prevalent. The last part you just said there about even students having those communication skills, because whether it's verbal, written, or whatever it might be, it's important. It can make you stand out. And if you think from a marking perspective, if you've got a paper or an exam that looks slightly different, that is easy to read, that you've communicated the points across, people are going to gain marks for that, surely. You know, it goes without saying.
Absolutely. It's what I also noticed because I grade MBA scripts as well.
Okay.
And clarity and simplicity are really important. Exactly.
Okay, so are there any fundamentals that we need to consider in becoming a good communicator?
Yes, I think it's really important for everyone to prioritize what I call the 3 rules of effective communication. Okay. And the first would be to consider your audience. So if you're looking at it from the perspective of a student, if you're writing exams and examinations and so on and so forth, you should be able to consider your audience, which would be the examiners and the people who would be grading your script. So basically, visualize or consider what will be important to them and just try to frame your messaging, your answers in a way that they would understand. So the audience is really important. That's the first one. Mm-hmm. Then the second one is what I consider the 3 beacons of effective communication. So ensure that your messages are simple to understand. If you're dealing with a lot of jargon or a lot of acronyms, then you should try to explain what those terms mean so that your piece is easily understandable as well. So simplicity. The second beacon is brevity. Again, get straight to the point. Cut to the chase and get straight to the point. Brevity is important. And the final one is clarity. Clarity is really important because it would also encompass, for example, as a student, your recommendations or your suggestions or solutions to a problem that you're trying to address in an examination paper. So if you are able to consider these 3 beacons, simplicity, brevity, and clarity, that would help. And then the final rule would be timely and factual feedback. And if you consider outside the examination hall and in your regular communication with peers and with supervisors and so on and so forth, having the ability to give timely feedback and to give factual feedback would put you in a good light with your different members of the audience. So these 3 rules, your audience, the beacons, and feedback, are good rules I think everyone should note when they're trying to communicate with whatever audience.
The three fantastic rules there. It just makes so much sense what you've just said. But that aside, I'm always keen to get people's opinions on this. And why do you think so many people fear public speaking as a way of communicating?
Public speaking.
Yeah.
I think it reportedly, stated to be the number one fear among, and across the world. Okay. I think there are two main reasons why people fear public speaking. Yeah. The first is a natural response to want to avoid anything uncomfortable. So putting yourself out there and making yourself open to be judged unfairly, to be critiqued, is not really a pleasant experience. So our brains might want to avoid that, and we might see being exposed and being put on a pedestal or being in public as something that will put a lot of stress on us, as something that could be almost sensed as a threat. And this is also due to some evolutionary wiring of the flight or fight response. So basically, we avoid this unpleasant situation as much as possible. So that's the first rule. The second reason, I think, stems from a lack of preparation. So if you are not prepared, maybe if you're told to speak suddenly and you don't have time to prepare, your anxiety increases, and then you start to feel all these negative symptoms. One way I usually advise students to combat this is to try as much as possible to prepare thoroughly and to practice several times. Because the more you practice, the more confident you become. In fact, I always state that practice begets confidence. So if you know your material and you're able to practice thoroughly, you will be able to reduce the anxiety and you would ace your presentation, your speeches. And for some students, I think they often are required to give an oral defense. I think I'm not too sure how it works for marketing students, but in some avenues, part of the assessment involves an oral defense of your material. So again, if you were able to practice thoroughly and to prepare, you would be able to perform better, and it will also calm your nerves. So those are the two main things I would like people to consider when it comes to public speaking.
I think people can make it a bigger fear than it actually is, and when you break it down in those terms, it just hearing somebody say that, it almost gives you confidence in that. Okay, it is actually achievable to do these things. It's not such a big fear.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you build credibility or authority? You know, we've spoken about these three rules for communication, but building credibility and authority. And is it different when you're actually speaking, for example, public speaking, or in a written content, say through a blog?
Okay, so generally you build credibility by knowing your audience. So it's important to gain as much knowledge as possible in your field, to test different methods of delivery, and then to stick what works for multiple audience members. So that, in a nutshell, is how you build credibility. But the approach differs slightly for public speaking and business writing. For public speaking, one way to basically build your credibility and to get over the phobia is to actually do more speaking. Is to put yourself out there and to connect with experts, with professionals who speak for a living, to learn tips and best practices, and to use them at every given opportunity, despite your fears. In fact, LinkedIn is an invaluable resource for professionals and students, and I'm increasingly seeing students become more engaged and more active on LinkedIn. So this is what I would also advise your listeners to know. To please get on LinkedIn. Don't wait until you feel that you get a full-time job, just get on LinkedIn and just try as much as possible to engage. Watch YouTube videos and so on and so forth. But it's really important to put yourself out there and to speak. It does get easier. I promise you this. It gets easier. It gets easier as you go along. So that is what I would advise for public speaking. For business writing, it's slightly different because in order for you to build credibility in business writing, two things have to happen. You have to read regularly. You have to read good material. And people are often surprised when I give this advice because, like, reading, what does reading have to do with writing? Well, it does have a whole lot to do with writing, yeah? Mm-hmm. So if you read regularly and if you read well-written books, articles, magazines, and so on and so forth, what happens over time is that these materials expose you to good grammar, to interesting styles and expression. And over time, all these things end up seeping into your writing and making you a much better writer. So read in within your field, read outside your field, just read regularly. But it must be written well. So you must read well-written content. And another way to build credibility in writing, again, is to seek opportunities to write. But there are three things I usually advise people to do for writing, to improve their writing skills. The first would be to update the grammar, because most of us haven't had time, to take refresher courses in grammar after school. So we probably would not remember a lot of the rules, and language changes and evolves over time as well. So it's a good idea to take refresher courses in grammar. The second thing would be, again, to consider rules of effective business writing, which are similar to the rules I talked earlier about for effective communication. For business writing, it is crucial to, again, know your audience, because the way you would write to your supervisor would differ from the way you write to maybe the head of a company or the head of the head of department in your school, and so on and so forth. So you need to consider your audience so you know the style that you're going to use to write. Again, and then the three beacons: simplicity, brevity, and clarity. And the third for business writing would be to build your competence in editing and proofreading. That is crucial, because you could have the best material, the best answers in an exam, and so on and so forth. But if you're not able to edit your work and proofread thoroughly, to basically eliminate grammatical errors and to ensure that your sentence structure makes sense, that your sentences are not too long, for example, and there's a logic that flows from paragraph to paragraph. If you don't take your time to proofread thoroughly, then your piece would not be as effective as you would like. So again, that is something that I advise people to do. And the third, again, would be to seek opportunities to write, even start a personal blog. I usually write about anything you want, start a personal blog, but just get into the habit of writing regularly. Don't wait until you have to write your marketing communications or marketing qualification exams. Yeah, exactly. So don't wait until that. Just start writing. Good editing tool would be Grammarly as well. Mm-hmm. But I'm not too sure whether Grammarly would be allowed in some examinations, but privately you could use Grammarly. University of Bristol has this fantastic web page that is really good for refreshing your grammar. So if you Google University of Bristol grammar, it takes you to the web page. On the web page, you have these fantastic results, all the grammatical norms and the rules. And then you can pick, there's a section on punctuation, for example. There's another section on confusable words, and so on and so forth. So you basically just click on whatever it is you need to get information on, and then read the short description. And more importantly, there's an opportunity for you to do the exercises online. So you could access this on your mobile, your tablet, or even a desktop. Do those exercises, and you are able to know immediately whether you're right or you're wrong. So, and this is a completely free tool. Mm-hmm. So these are ways that I think everyone could improve the credibility in both public speaking and business writing.
And I'll put a link into the show notes for the University of Bristol Grammar, the URL for that, so people can just link directly to that, which is cool.
Exactly.
So, some great points there, loads to digest and to take forward into everything we do. Just touching upon a couple of things when you're talking about reading, the one thing that I've noticed as I'm getting older is that when I've been doing courses, learning, educating, self-learning, whatever it might be, it might not sink in straight away. You might not use it straight away, but give it 6 to 8 months, and then all of a sudden it almost becomes natural to you. And
exactly.
That's, fundamentally, even if it doesn't make sense, keep going, because at one stage it'll just click, and you won't even know it's clicked.
Exactly. Absolutely. I've actually found this to be true in my case. Sometimes when I'm writing a blog article, and then I use a word and expression. And then one day I went back, I was like, this isn't a word I usually use. How did I get this word? I had no idea. I actually stopped to think about it, and I couldn't remember, but I knew that it had to be something I had read, I'd seen consistently, and it just came naturally. And that is the same thing for expressions and styles and so on and so forth. So it's really important. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is really, really important. That is what I find to be true.
And the second thing, when you were mentioning LinkedIn, massive advocate of LinkedIn. That's how we linked. And that's
exactly.
why you're on the podcast now. But that brings me nicely on to my next question. And that's about the software and the channels and the transparency digital technologies have given us. Is this a help with our communication, or a hindrance? Like there's almost nowhere to hide now once you're out there.
Exactly. I think it could be both, actually. I'll give you an example. Twitter initially forced us to communicate our messaging in 140 characters. I think now it's gone up to about 200 and something. But what that did is that it forced us to become creative with our words and phrases. And that was a good thing. And online, there are also other free tools for editing, for public speaking, and so on and so forth. So it could be useful. Technology could be useful in helping us to hone our communication skills. However, like a double-edged sword, it could also be a hindrance, because it makes us lazy. So we use slang, we use abbreviations, and if we're not careful, our spelling ability weakens, and our grammar just goes. It just gets worse. And what happens is that this makes us to write error-laden emails, documents, and exam papers. A good example of this is that I routinely grade MBA scripts for full-time and executive MBA participants. And what I've found that unfortunately, in some cases, the writing is weakened by informal expressions, and spelling errors, which I attribute to informal conversations on social media, for example. And when I point this out to them, they're actually not aware until we're doing the coaching and I point out the errors one-on-one, and they're like, wow. And it just goes to show that if we're not careful, technology can actually make us ineffective communicators. So it's just to be mindful of both the good points and the bad points of technology on our communication skills.
I personally think there'll be some point in the future, maybe 100, 200 years, where we just use emojis to contact each other. There are no letters. It's just emojis, universal emojis.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting there.
Yeah,
we're getting there. It's actually seeping into some writing, in emails, LOL,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when writing an assignment, it can be sometimes difficult to get points across, or the main points across in certain answers, if you like. What tips can you give us to negate the issues of these difficulties?
Okay. For writing, stick to the 3 rules. Yeah?
Yeah.
Your audience. Now, if you're writing examination papers, your audience would be the people that would grade your assignment. And you're likely to use the semi-formal style, because except you're writing to the queen or you're the head of a government agency, you are rarely going to use the strictly formal style, yeah? So you're likely to use the semi-formal style. And that will also help you to know how to structure how to structure your answers. And the 3 beacons, simplicity, explain your answers in a very simple manner. Get to the point, brevity, be as brief as possible. And the third one is clarity. If there's a suggestion or a solution or a recommendation, then you must write it in very plain terms. For example, if after answering the question, you decide that the solution to that case problem would be to increase the budget, for example, for IT, for the IT department by X%, which would translate into, I don't know, a certain amount in pounds, then you should clearly state that. So you said, this is my answer, this is what I believe to be true, and this is what I recommend that will solve this problem. So simplicity, brevity, and clarity. And if you are allowed to use some editing tools, then I would advise that in addition to your usual Microsoft Word spell check, to use Grammarly. Grammarly is another app that is free. And if you just Google Grammarly, it will take you to the app. And I think it comes with a Chrome extension. So if you're allowed to take home assignments, whereby you could use different tools, then by all means use Grammarly. Otherwise, just take your time to write your answers in a simple, brief, and clear format, and take extra time to reread what you've written. Do it more than once, slowly and audibly. In that way, you would be able to catch some errors. Yeah. I'm talking about situations whereby in a classroom situation, you do not have access to Grammarly, to Microsoft Word spell checks, and so on and so forth. Read your work slowly and audibly. In fact, some editors and some those who proofread for a reading, they even advise you to read backwards, because apparently that causes, I've tried it. It doesn't quite work for me, but it does work for other people. But what I believe works for me is reading slowly and audibly. Yeah. Okay. Slowly and audibly, you would be able to do that. So that's a good tip, I think, for those who will be writing examinations. And I think you said offline that the examinations are likely to happen in about a week or 2 weeks.
The assignments, yeah.
The assignments,
and exams, as well, and exams.
And exams, exactly. So again, the 3 beacons: simplicity, brevity, and clarity. Consider your audience, so you write in the acceptable style, which is semi-formal. Don't use slang, don't use informal language, just get to the point. And proofread and edit your work as many times as you are able to. So with these 3 rules, I think you would be able to do well.
Great.
Do well in the assignments and so on.
Fantastic, simple rules there we should all be abiding by. Okay, so I'm going to be selfish here for a little bit.
Right.
I say a lot, okay? And since I've been doing this podcast, I listen back and I hear it. I don't particularly like it, but it's part of me, and I'm fully aware of it, even so much so now that when I say it, I kind of cringe. And I wouldn't say I'm the most eloquent writer either. In fact, I prefer listening to audio than I do actually reading books. I prefer speaking than I do writing. Is this something I should be working on, or should I stay true to who I actually am?
Well, I think we could all improve in our communication skills. We could. I constantly learn. Yeah, I learn from experts. I learn best practices, and I hone them. I try some techniques, some don't work. I discard them, and those that work, I try to do them consistently. My brain is like a sponge. Yeah, so it soaks up useful information from different credible sources, which I store, which I store for future use, or which I use to improve my skills. Now, the that you talk about, they're called fillers, and they're like little words like so, and anything repetitive that we tend to say when we're trying to find the right words. Now, they're fine when used occasionally, so I wouldn't really worry too much about them. However, what you would want to avoid would be to use them excessively. Yeah, because this would mean that those little words distract your listeners from your important message. So one way to reduce the excessive use of these filler words is to force yourself to speak slowly. It is tough. I know it's not easy. It's really tough. But if you have to force yourself, and it will seem unnatural at first, but nobody would really complain that you're speaking too slowly. So force yourself to speak slowly, but loudly. And that is really important, because if you use a loud tone, you are unlikely to resort to a lot of these fillers. So speak loudly and slowly. And what that does is that it forces you to be clear on what you want to say and to articulate your ideas better. And pausing is also effective. Yeah, pausing. If you have a second, a few seconds, it's an effective tool, which also allows your words to marinate in the minds of your audience. So I think that's what you could do. That's what I try to do anyway.
Right, we're going to try this now. I'm going to really slow down and really focus on not saying Lucille, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Let's go.
Excellent. Name one must-read business book.
Right. That would have to be Talk Like Ted by Carmen Gallo. I read it last year. It's a masterpiece. It shares great ideas on how to become an effective speaker who moves people to action. So Talk Like Ted by Carmen Gallo. Fantastic book.
Excellent. What was the last thing you Googled?
That would have to be my website. Yeah, because I'm obsessed about its design and about improving its content. So yeah, I think I go on my website like every day. Oh, like I could change this, I could do this, I could do that. So yeah, that would be my website.
Nothing wrong with that at all. What is your most used app at the moment?
LinkedIn, undoubtedly. Cool. LinkedIn. I remember that's how we got connected, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite theory, concept, or methodology?
My saying is this: the sooner you start, the sooner you finish.
Love it.
I say this all the time to myself, to stay motivated and to basically just get on with it, especially when faced with stacks of MBA exam scripts that I have to grade at work. Sometimes I have like 2 piles and I'm staring. I'm like, look, just get on with it. So yeah, so that's what I always believe.
Yeah, I heard this from somebody else and it's along the same lines. And it's that time is going to pass anyway. So you might as well do it.
Exactly. Just get on with it. Yeah.
What would your one tip be for people who are studying at the moment?
Well, I would say visualize success. Yeah. So realize that in order to get to where you want to be, which will be to pass your examinations and to get to the next level and to get all your qualifications, to get employed, to start your business, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you just realize that in order to get to where you want to be, you need to study hard, you need to be focused, and you need to be prepared. And just know that there is no reward without some sort of sacrifice.
And final question, Lucille, if people want to find out more about Rethinking Business Communications blog or get in touch with you, where should they go? Okay,
for the blog, you just www.Lucille Ossai, so that'll be LucilleOssai.com/blog. And then you could get in touch with me via my website. All the information is there. Just go LucilleOssai.com. Again. Yeah, I think that's quite straightforward. Oh, you could also reach me on LinkedIn.
Hey.
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, just search for my name. On Twitter, again, the handle Lucille Ossai, even on Pinterest. So yeah. So excellent. Social media.
Great stuff. Lucille, it's been fantastic talking to you about communications, and I'm so conscious that I'm not saying that word right now. It's unbelievable, but it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Peter. That was really, really nice of you.
It's top takeaway time, and if I don't communicate these effectively, I've got a feeling I'm going to be in a bit of trouble. So here goes, no pressure, Pete. Communication skills give you the opportunity to set yourself apart from the rest of the pack. If you're communicating better than others, it means you are better understood, provide a clear explanation, and make it easy to follow your thought process. And this is the same for your marketing assignments, where a structured and coherent approach pays dividends. Lucille highlighted her 3 rules for effective communication, which we can all learn from to become better communicators in anything we do. Now, these are: 1, consider your audience; 2, use simplicity, brevity, and clarity, what Lucille calls the 3 beacons; and finally, timely and factual feedback. And the final takeaway here is, when communicating through writing, always make sure you know and understand who your audience is and write accordingly. Again, this is the same with your marketing assignment. Make it easy to follow, edit, and proofread, while also not taking any chances with incoherent language and cryptic sentences. Which brings us back full circle to the 3 beacons of communication: simplicity, brevity, and clarity. And now it's back on to our top tips and continuation of the extended marketing mix, or reviewing it, the 7 Ps. This week it's process. Efficiency, structure, usability are just 3 words that spring to mind when you think about process. And this is just the same with the extended marketing mix. The requirement of a process within this mix is vital for a number of reasons, not just the 3 key words we've highlighted before. Firstly, every process will have an impact on a customer, either directly or indirectly. A good tip here is to reverse engineer the whole process. Look at it from the customer's perspective and work out what could be improved. Although these processes and systems need to be robust and effective to stand any chance of working, they still need a level of flexibility to deal with changes within a marketplace, a supply chain, or indeed a cultural shift. And finally, involve others in creating and designing any type of marketing process, as this improves communication internally, generates buy-in to any changes, and helps to view the whole functionality from different perspectives, so it works as well internally as it does externally. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there, and hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.